Feminism is a hate group that I used to be a part of and loved. I was an angry feminazi who believed feminism was helping women, but it's not. I believe that feminism is actually hurting women. Feminism started for real reasons of inequality and not having the right to own property and not having the right to vote and not being seen as equal to men. This was a real reason for feminism to begin. However, it's turned into something worse. I don't get why feminists are fighting for equality when we have just that and more. So I thought, what better way to learn more about feminism than to ask a man? So, J-Ryze, can you teach us and talk to us about what is feminism and is it actually helping anyone?
Last week, we talked about labels and how complicated they can be, all the nuances of them. And feminism is just another label. And so it has all the pitfalls that any label has. The label may have started out as one thing and then evolved and been co-opted or radicalized. And now the label means something else. So people will fight and argue all day long about what feminism means. Some will be referring to first wave feminism. Some will be referring to third wave or fourth wave or 20 wave or whatever. And it's good to define your terms when you're aiming for a productive discussion. And so my best definition of feminism, seeing it in its most positive light, is a movement or philosophy focused on honoring feminine-leaning folks in the correct way, in their rightful place in society. And feminism, in its worst definition, is basically extremist radical hatred of masculine-leaning folks. So I hope that helps.
That's a really good definition. And I liked your more positive one. That's the definition of feminism that I believed in when I labeled myself as a feminist. So do you think that it's helping people?
So first off, I believe people misunderstand helping and harming because they try to label things as helpful or harmful. But most things aren't like that. Even hugs can become harmful if you do it too much and too often. Even water can become harmful if you do it too much and too often. And so labeling water as helpful and hugs as helpful and feminism as harmful or whatever people want to label it as is a very simplistic, confused view of the world. It's not how the world works. I believe feminism was founded with good intentions and was aimed at helping. And I believe it did that in a variety of ways for some time. But just like my other examples, it can easily become harmful. And I believe that's sort of what we're seeing now. Most modern versions of feminism are hard to call extremely helpful. I don't see them blessing the world tremendously at this point.
Agreed. Okay. Well, we mentioned earlier, feminism began as the fight for equal rights. And of course, this is a wonderful reason because we all deserve to be seen as equal and have the same rights. However, a lot of women don't realize that we have a tremendous amount of rights and they're not really taking notice of this. When we are in a divorce, we are the ones that get alimony. We are the ones that get custody of our children. We get full custody, child support, and the other parent ends up with basically nothing. Now, I know people are going to say there's exceptions. We're not talking about exceptions on this podcast ever. We're talking about in general. And in general, women win most of the time. Women get free stuff all the time. And I cannot even tell you how many times I've gotten stuff and gotten my way from men and women for crying and just, I'm sorry. Like, and men do not have this luxury at all. So to say that we're not equal and we're being put down and we don't have the same things as men is just not fair. So why do you think so many women in our society act like we're oppressed when we're clearly not?
Well, what did you mention in your question? You said that you can get all kinds of stuff freely flowing to you just by batting your lashes or crocodile tears and playing the female victim card.
Yeah.
Or
showing boobs or
or the oops, I didn't know card. So if we look at the level of consciousness of most people, their level of maturity, how well they've been raised, what they're capable of, their philosophies and understanding of life and their thought processes, are most people likely to find out about a superpower like that and stop using it?
No.
Right. Even if secretly deep down they can kind of tell this is not a healthy way to use this power and I'm totally abusing this to get more for less.
Yeah.
They're still not likely to stop using it.
Oh, no, they're not.
Right. So you just outlined feminine leaning folks have learned that they can rely on these emotional expressions and get what they want. They can point the finger, they can place blame, they can cry out oppressed, they can cry out I'm a victim, they can flash some skin, they can do all of these things and get what they want.
Yes.
Who's going to let that go?
Nobody.
Yeah.
Like, most women aren't going to give that. I'm not.
Right.
I'm not giving it up.
So if they suddenly drop feminism and say, you know what? We don't need this anymore. We're all kind of equal rights. We have the property. We have the vote. We get a ton of free stuff from society. This is enough. We're good. Let's just drop the feminist movement. We don't need to fight for anything anymore. If they do that, they're going to lose it on all their free stuff, their superpower. People, they're basically admitting, yeah, we've kind of taken too much.
Right? Okay.
They're kind of admitting we're sort of abusing y'all with our emotional expression or our playing the victim card or our please support the feminist movement vibe.
Okay.
Please give us more.
All right. I got you. So then feminists are leaning in towards we don't have rights and we're oppressed to continue this
more for less,
the superpower, like, so we don't have to give it up.
Yeah. And they'll keep getting tons of free stuff without really having to work for it. They can just sort of, do their whining thing or their, oh, I'm a victim thing or their I'm being oppressed thing.
But can we do that without all that? Because I don't call myself a feminist. I don't resonate with them, but I still use my superpower.
No, I'm not equating that superpower with the feminist movement. What I'm saying is that if most of society is convinced that women are weak victims who are being oppressed, then plenty of good things will flow their way and people are susceptible to their superpower.
I got you.
They're very susceptible to the damsel in distress or establishment is hurting me or whatever.
Okay. So you're saying then because if others see us like this as the damsel in distress, then they'll continue giving us the things and the stuff. But if they see us as equal and we're the same, like men see each other, then that gravy train will stop.
Yeah. And people will be much less likely to fall prey to those particular superpowers.
Okay.
Because it'll be like, what are you talking about? We all agree everyone's equal. You have all the rights. You're good. What are you talking about, oppressed? Like this cry of oppression won't work very well anymore. And the gravy train will stop. And everyone kind of secretly knows that. Even kids know, if I pretend I'm sick, I get a ton of free stuff from mom and dad and like all this extra care. But as soon as I admit that I'm healthy, life goes back to normal and I don't get all that extra care anymore. People just know. We just secretly know what's going to stop the gravy train and we will do anything we can to avoid it. The kid will keep pretending he's sick and the modern day feminists will keep pretending they're super oppressed and they don't have anything going for them.
I got you. So my son, after I would feed him lunch, he would go to dance class on his own. We lived in New York City, rode the train, and he would go to McDonald's and cry that there were two girls that worked there that just loved him, that he was hungry and he hadn't had any lunch, even though he just ate, and they would give him free food like almost every day.
Sure.
And he didn't want me to ever go in there because then they would know that
it will stop his gravy train.
Stop his gravy train.
Right. And so secretly, deep down, he knows what's up. He knows just keep mom away. He might not be able to explain why I'm doing it. Why are you doing this? I don't know. I just don't want you to come in.
Yeah.
Oh, but The real reason is you'll do anything to get more for less, and you'll do anything to keep the gravy train going. And modern day adults and modern day feminists are no real different. This is like 99% of society. Even though he knows it's unhealthy and immature and greedy and not a proper way to behave. Like, you were not put on earth to do this and go steal McDonald's meals with your crocodile tears.
Right.
But he did it anyways. And most people will. And it takes someone of extremely high integrity to cut off the gravy train to themselves when they know it's wrong, or it's gotten out of control, or it's taking advantage of other people. How often are you going to find this kind of high integrity person? Almost never. And so how many high integrity feminists are you going to bump into? Almost none. And so most of them are doing exactly what your son was doing. And would you say your son is a feminine leaning person?
He is. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense, actually, because I've been very frustrated and annoyed with feminists over this whole thing. Like, there's Phoebe in Friends says a line, we can vote. What more do these broads want? and it's true. Like, I didn't understand until this. So this is a quite eye-opening answer. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, so this wave of feminism is called the fourth wave, from 2009, I believe, to now. And so this wave of feminism now is also including the LGBTQIA community as well. And also, before I ask this question, I want to point out that I know I research a lot of stuff about feminism and what women are saying right now. And a lot of women of color don't feel like they have a voice in the feminism space. So they're also kind of fracturing off with that too. Black lesbians, Latina lesbians, and so on and so forth. And as a person of color, as a Latina, I don't understand this. So I wanted to ask you, why do you think, and this is just your opinion, why do you think that the feminist movement is embracing the LGBTQIA community as a whole, with trans women and trans men even, and all their issues, they're lumping them into feminism? Why do you think?
Well, so in our last question, what did we discover? We discovered that the oppression of women in Western society is mostly what?
Stuff. I mean, no, it's fake. It's not real. We're not oppressed. Yes. And we're using it to get what we want.
Right. The oppression of women in the West is mostly gone.
Yeah.
They kind of reign queen of society. Like, they get handed everything, just about.
Yeah.
They get a lot of leeway and a lot of freedoms, and they have everything they've ever fought for, just about.
Yeah.
Even the wage gap has recently been proven in research to be non-existent or barely existent. But they don't want to lose their gravy train, right?
Right.
But they have nothing to cry about, right? Now there's no cause to champion. There's no marginalized people to stand up for. There's no underdog to be, at least not in general, for women in general in the West. Yeah. But where can we find some, though? If we need to keep our gravy train going, keep our movement going, where can we find some?
In the LGBTQIA community.
Let's go find some other marginalized communities. And if we can't find any, let's fracture one into a whole bunch of them.
Yeah. Okay.
And so
this makes sense.
And so with your son, if you suddenly prove that his sickness was fake and now he has to go to school, what's he going to scramble around and do?
Find other ways to be sick, or other ways to stay home, or
break
a finger or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or I have to look after the pet, or I need to go console a friend, or someone at school died, or whatever. Your son will scramble for anything to keep that gravy train going. He wants to be weighted on hand and foot. He doesn't want to go to school. He wants to get his way. And healthy or not, mature or not, high integrity or not, he will just scramble and find whatever he can grab at.
This is true.
So, what do you think happened to the feminism movement?
So, like the emoji, okay. So then you're saying that feminists, maybe not consciously, but are using the trans women and trans rights as a way to stay relevant and to get stuff.
You tell me.
That's what it sounds like. This is.
Well, I'm just saying it's one possibility. Is that?
Oh
not,
yeah. It's one.
Is that not certainly a possibility?
Of course.
And does it seem like a likely possibility?
Yes.
Since people have been doing this since they were children, we've been trained to do this, and people will generally scramble to keep their gravy train going.
Yeah.
Right. And it takes a very high integrity person to just admit, you know what? The gravy train stops here. I've been abusing you guys. Where the movement is over. We have what we wanted. Right? When's feminism going to stop? 10 years? 20 years? 50 years? 100 years? 1,000 years? It's never going to stop if people can milk it for free stuff to get their way and get what they want.
Yeah.
But
sympathy and...
But it would stop if people all stepped up and admitted, yeah, we've kind of accomplished what we wanted, instead of scrambling for yet another marginalized cause. Or another excuse or another finger to point.
Well, it makes sense because the women who don't make the same amount of money as men is because they're not in the same jobs as men, or they're not have the same amount of time put in jobs. Like there's stats, you can Google it. This is true. And so they had to find another woman in quotes, to me, other women who are oppressed. And the next logical choice is a trans woman.
Or women of color.
Or women of color.
Or whatever.
So especially on with all the stuff with Black Lives Matter and all the issues, and they're real issues. And I am aware, as a Latina woman, I have had plenty of racist moments in my life, and I've been called many racist names. But being okay with it and like being past it, it doesn't give me the opportunity to lay that my story down if other people are talking about racism or inequality. So this makes a lot of sense.
Let me ask you. So finally, feminism has got all the rights and all the stuff they want. Now they're working on trans and LGBTQIA and lesbians of color or whatever they're working on. Mm-hmm. What happens when they get their stuff too, right? 10, 20, 30, 40 years, now they all have their rights too, okay? Right. You think feminism dies? Or you think they find another one? Let's help autistic women or women on the spectrum or whatever. Let's help amputee women. They're not being treated properly. Or women in wheelchairs or so on. Like it's, you think feminism just dies, or there's fifth wave and sixth wave?
No, there'll be, I predict you're correct, that there'll be fifth, sixth, seventh.
Sure, it's easy to predict.
Somebody.
Yeah, of course they'll find somebody, because anything to keep the gravy train going. Mm-hmm. They're not actually going to stop when they achieve what they wanted to achieve.
It's true. It makes perfect sense. That's like saying to me, okay, Sin, from now on, you can't use your sexuality and you can't squeeze your boobs together and bend over to get free stuff or a discount. Like that's not going to happen. Or start wearing turtlenecks. That's not going to happen. Like, why would I want to stop that? Like, I'm really sorry, but I totally, this makes so much sense. And also it kind of answers my next question too. So I don't know if you had more to say on this. Okay. So the next thing I was going to talk about was the fourth wave of feminism is really harping on women being victims like that. And we're teaching young girls now that they're a victim of men and that we should be afraid of men, especially straight, cis, white men, which I think is completely unfair, but whatever, fair and not fair. That's another topic. So now I understand why they're doing this. My question was, why are feminists harping and really teaching the youth to be afraid of men and that they're weak?
Yeah. I mean, like I was saying with your son as an example, he's been raised to learn that playing the victim equals success. This is how you get what you want in life. It will work almost every time in our society. Play the victim anytime, you'll get what you want. Play the victim to the media, they'll love you. Play the victim to your partner or spouse, they'll give you what you want. Play the victim to the cops or the government, you'll get all kinds of concessions. People have been raised, especially women and feminists, have been raised to internalize the philosophy that victimhood equals success. And so you will just see victimhood everywhere. They will cling to that victimhood like nobody's business. They will raise their children the exact same way they have been raised. No one's going to magically break this cycle or this circle. I mean, very few people are going to magically break this cycle or this circle.
Yeah.
It's just going to perpetuate for a long time until someone with wisdom and knowledge and high integrity stands up and is like, no, I won't play the victim, even if it gets me what I want. I won't play the victim, even if it stops my gravy train. I won't play the victim. The world has enough victims. I'm going to take personal responsibility, take personal accountability. I'm going to use my power and use my potential to make my way in life and create the life that I want and reach my dreams without harming others, without burdening others, and without acting like a fucking victim. But it's rare.
It is.
And so this is why. They teach it because they've internalized that victim equals success.
Yeah, it's true. So I want to read something. When I was doing my research, one of the things that I noticed that feminists were preaching about being a victim is that women are the greatest victims of violence from men, right? And that women are murdered more than men in the U.S. So the actual statistic is that in the U.S., there's 31.2% of homicide victims are male, and only 3.6% are women. So this is a complete and total lie, because and men make up almost 80% of all homicides recorded worldwide. So feminists pushing this, women are the ones who are violently attacked, women are the ones killed the most. This is a lie. However, I will give them that when women are murdered, it's usually their spouse or their partner who does it. And so like the whole domestic violence thing, they push that too.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because most guys today are literally frightened to death of touching a woman. Like we don't want to make an advance. We don't want to catcall. We don't want to touch. We don't want to get violent. We don't want to get physical. We don't even want to participate in rough sex, because you could just take the bruises and run to the cops. Like we don't want to do nothing. So that 3% or whatever makes sense to me, like a tiny amount.
Yeah.
And your point about when it does happen, it's a spouse beating on another spouse. Okay, I get that. But there's two kinds of violence. There's physical violence, which is easy to see and obvious, and people like to make a huge deal out of it.
Yes.
But there is also emotional violence.
Yes.
And it is invisible, intangible, and it often goes on for a very long time before someone snaps and becomes physical in return. But who talks about the emotional violence going on in the world, in society? And how much emotional violence is being committed by men or by women or by feminine-leaning folks or masculine-leaning folks? How much emotional violence is happening? And is the physical violence we see the same as the emotional violence that's going on? Or is it much less? Is it, there's way more physical violence than emotional violence? Like, this would be interesting to hear people talk about or discuss. I'd like to see more studies on this. Do people even recognize that emotional violence is a thing and it exists? And it's something that feminine-leaning folks use on people all the time and get away with because no one can call them out on it. And then someone ends up snapping or becoming violent because they don't know what else to do in the face of this emotional turmoil and manipulation and gaslighting and whatever, blaming and victimhood and so on. And so then what are they supposed to do? We're too scared to get physical, but we're not educated enough in emotional violence to spot it or call it out. So it just keeps hitting us in the face. And so what is the partner supposed to do? Like, they're in a rock and a hard place. You're putting someone in a serious corner. And so what are they supposed to do? It's get violent, leave the relationship, or kill yourself. Like, give up on life, accept the abuse.
Yeah. That's really good. A really good point. So when I was doing my research, I noticed that a lot of women are using the word gaslighting to refer to the emotional abuse that they receive from men. But nobody was talking about the women gaslighting. The only time I saw anything brought up from the woman's side is Amber Heard. Well, if you think there's only one Amber Heard in the whole world and no one else, no other woman does this, you're full of crap. This is not true. I know 4 different dudes that have experienced a massive emotional abuse, and then it turned into physical abuse from their partner. I myself, and I'm not proud to say this at all in any way, but I was emotionally abusive to my ex-husband. A lot of times when I talk about him, I talk about like what he didn't do and his shortcomings and why I was unhappy, but I don't really ever talk about what I did wrong. And what I did wrong was I gaslit him. I emotionally abused him. I was manipulative until I got my way. When he said no, I fought with him. I got my way any way possible. And I am not the only woman that has done this. Lots of us do it. I mean, I'm a changed person now, and I don't do that anymore. And I've learned that my words are just as powerful as a man's fists. And I hurt my ex-husband in lots of ways that he probably didn't feel safe saying to me. He probably didn't feel safe telling anyone my wife is emotionally abusing me. And I was. And it wasn't fair. And it wasn't right. And I know he secretly watches our content, so I'm sorry. But I know there's a lot of men out there that are on that receiving end. And this is where the happy wife, happy life comes in. And I just watched a video on TikTok where this guy, the woman was breastfeeding the child, and he comes in the room and he's like, is it okay if I go with my friends and have fun? And I'm only going to be gone for a little while. And she's like, yeah, fine. And then he comes back and he's like, are you sure? Like, it's okay. And like, this goes on for a few minutes. And then at the end, he comes back and he's like, I starts taking off his coat and stuff. And she's like, I thought you were going out. He's like, no, I'm not. And he tells a friend, no, I'm not going. Bye. Because
she didn't support it.
She didn't support it. She was just like,
it was super negative energy.
Yeah.
It was emotional manipulation.
It was. But the comments all showed like, yeah, that's right. Teach him. Yeah, he knows better. Like, what? Like, is this really feminism? Is this what it means to be feminist? Because if it does, I don't want any part of it at all in any way, shape, or form. Because I am not a victim from anybody, and I am not making anyone a victim ever again. I was wrong for a long time for what I did. And I will not repeat that again. So if you're watching this and you think happy wife, happy life, and that's the way to be, and run your man and control him, and I have news for you. You're abusive. So I got a little triggered. So I'm really sorry. I apologize. Okay, so then I'll move on. Oh, I did have something that I wanted to say, actually. One more thing. So if you're feminists that are teaching other women and girls especially that we're victims and we're weak, this is showing them that being emotionally abusive and manipulative is the way to combat that. And that's not okay either. So be better and teach these kids better, please. Okay, so you wrote an amazing article called Girls Run the World. And I'll link it in the description. But I want to read a section that you wrote. So you wrote, as time went on, those attitudes were found to be less acceptable. So instead, women were made to feel inferior because they didn't bring the same things to the table that a man did. Earning money was going out in the world was seen as far superior to the nurturing role a woman plays at home of uniting family, nurturing others, and satisfying needs. Plus, women were often forced, pressured, or bullied into staying home as the only thing they were good for. So when I read it the first time earlier doing my research, this kind of triggered me because this was an argument I had a lot with my ex-husband. I was a stay-at-home mother for many years with him, and my mother was a single mother. So I kind of understand both sides of it. My mom was never there. I would raise myself with the television. And being able to be home with the kids was something that, like, I'm so grateful that I was able to do. My next question: why are women fighting against staying home and raising their kids?
So I don't know the actual reason, or if there's even one reason for this. Some will say the Rockefellers wanted more workers in the workforce, and so they encouraged and created an educational culture that nudged women out of the home. Some will say that women were tired of being relegated to the home. Some will say the right to vote and own property changed everything. Some will say it's a combination of all of these things. But to me, none of that matters. All that matters is that every human on earth is a free-willed individual who has their own wishes and desires, wherever those came from. Like, I literally don't care where someone's desires came from. I don't care if your kinks came from some childhood abuse, as long as you enjoy it now. I don't care if someone became a doctor to spite their family, or someone became an artist to spite their family. As long as they're crushing it as an artist now, as long as they're happy now. I don't care why someone wants to stay in the home and raise children, or someone wants to be out of the home and do their own thing. I literally could give a fuck as long as they're happy. And that's what matters. That's the important issue here, is we as a society should be aiming for everyone, every individual in society, to be doing what makes them happy, as long as it doesn't harm someone else, as best as they can, and as best as we can. And so if you meet a woman who wants to have a career and not be in the home and you don't like that, okay, let them do their thing. Go meet someone else.
Yeah.
If you meet a woman who loves being in the home and doesn't want to have a career and you don't like that, leave them be. Go meet someone else. There's no law or rule that says all feminine-leaning folks should do this and all masculine-leaning folks should do that. Life's way more complicated than that. Humans are way more complicated than that. Every individual has their own things, wishes, and desires. Some of them will be a perfect fit for last generation. Some of them will be pushing this new generation forward. Some of them will be a weird blend of the two. Some will be way off in left field. They'll start their own society. It doesn't matter. All that matters is if someone says they have a desire, you take them at their word and you try and help them achieve it, or you leave them be, or whatever. And if they discover they didn't really want that, they'll discover it in their own time and be like, oh, that was a shitty phase of my life. I didn't actually want that. Fine. If I meet someone and they want to be a radical feminist, so be it. I'm not going to hang around you. That's not fun for me. Mm-hmm. And I imagine you're going to drop that phase eventually, but that's your life. If you want to learn the hard way, or if you want to be that for X amount of time, go ahead. And it might make them the best person ever afterwards, or it might make them the best person ever during. Or maybe my judgy, like, oh, that's not the right choice for them, like, gets proven wrong. And it turns out that was the perfect choice for them. Right?
Right.
So I honestly don't get the whole fight and debate over should women be in the home? Should they be in the workplace? Can they do both? Whatever. It's like, I'll let you try whatever you want. But if you find out after 10 years, it's been a miserable slog and you kind of hated it and you really wish you stayed home with the kids, that's on you. Or if you stay at home with the kids the whole time and you put your dreams on hold and your career on hold, and then 10 years later, you're like, oh, I kind of regret having kids and staying home and I should have went for my dreams. It's like, that's on you too. But I'm happy for whatever choice you want to make. Like, I'm not here to be the police of everyone's mistakes. And I don't get people who try to be.
I don't either. I follow a lot of stay-at-home moms. I was a homeschool mom, stay-at-home mom, and I still follow a lot of that content. And I'll see in the comments people who will rip them to shreds for being this kind of woman and being feminine and wearing nice clothes and makeup. And I just don't understand that.
Be whatever you want to be.
But the whole basis of feminism was for us to rally together, to lift each other up so that our voices could be heard, so that we could be a community, so we could be better. And then going into another woman's comments and tearing them down and ripping them apart for the kind of woman they are and want to be. That's not fair. But then if that same woman goes to a trans woman account and starts saying all this horrible, mean stuff about them not being a real woman, then she gets attacked. And it's just, I really want to see women just really being kind and lifting each other up and not giving a crap if they stay at home or they work or they're trans or whatever. I don't care. Let them be.
Well, I can tell you why they won't let them be.
Oh, I want to hear this, please.
All right. Well, that's a wonderful thing. And I want that too. Mm-hmm. The main reason people won't let other people be is because they're worried it's going to contagiously affect them or their kids. So sure, people want to let trans people be, but they're in our schools and they're in our bathrooms and they're in our gyms and they're in our sports, right? Mm-hmm. And so now they're afraid that if they let someone just be, it's going to magically spread and infect all of society, and they're going to wake up tomorrow and the world's going to be trans.
They'll catch the trans.
Yeah, kind of. This is a big part of why. Like, because live and let people be sounds reasonable. Mm-hmm. And to me, it is.
Yeah, me too.
Except to a good chunk of society, usually the conservative side of society, mm-hmm. It's not reasonable because of this fear. They fear like a slippery slope. They fear as soon as this gets in front of them or in their schools or whatever, it's going to infect the next generation and they're going to wake up and whatever. But the thing is, the same issue was raised with violent video games.
Yeah.
Or the same issue was raised with gay marriage.
Yeah.
But if you look at it, nature or life or society always seems to stop this from happening. We didn't wake up and everyone was just gay and getting married. It's only a small percentage of people.
Yeah.
We didn't wake up and everyone just became a shooter. Every single human on the earth became a violent video game shooter.
Right.
There might be more mass shootings, and I don't think you can attribute those to video games. I think there's a lot more going on there.
Agreed.
But it's not like every time you turn around, there's another one. Like, I can't live my life. I honestly can't go outside because, yeah. So it never really seems to be as bad or go as far as these fearful conservative types fear. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, if these people believe so much in personal accountability and they believe in raising their child right, mm-hmm. then whatever's going on around them shouldn't really matter. You should be raising your child to deal with the world. If you see a violent video game, this is not reality. Please don't do this. If you see a trans person, we don't believe in trans, so don't do this or whatever. Like you teach your kid properly. If you're afraid that a human being existing is a problem, then that's not a problem with them. That's a problem with you and your paranoid fear. Like, you don't know how to navigate life. You can't. That's like saying if I walked into a buffet and I'm a vegan, but there's some meat dishes that exist, that my life is over. We need to protest and get all the meat out of buffets everywhere.
Right.
It's ridiculous. You should be strong enough to have something exist in front of you and not be tempted by it, or to hold your values. And so, to me, of course you can just let people live and let them be. Mm-hmm. I'm not afraid of any of these people. Like, let them be whatever they want. Let them have a career or not. Let them be trans or not. Let them be whatever.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't affect me and they can't influence me. I'm my own person. It's fine for meat to exist in the buffet if I'm a vegan. It's not a big deal. Yeah. So I never quite understood the weird irrational fear. Like, it's going to infect all of society. Oh no, it's a slippery slope. Like, slippery slope exists, but I don't think the slippery meat slope frightens the vegan. Like, it's fine.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. And you're right. So I'll use my kids as an example. So when they were young, we had a rule in our house that they weren't allowed to go outside in pajamas or sweatpants. Like, they had to dress properly to leave the house for anything, school, an event, grocery store, didn't matter. But when we would go out, we would see kids and people in their sweats all the time, messy buns, and they look like they rolled out of bed and went shopping.
Did you start a protest?
Nope.
Because now these people are influencing my children and they exist in the world and they're ruining our schools?
No. Oh. I did not.
Oh.
I let them live their life. But in my house, you were not leaving with your sweats on. You were not leaving looking like you just rolled out of bed.
Right. And now, as your kids grow up, are they free to make their own choices and wear pajamas outside if they want?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're individual people with their own free will. It's almost like you raise them the best you can, let them see what's out there in the world and make their own choice.
And the funny thing is, because I kind of relaxed on that and was like, whatever, you can do what you want. Now they choose, my son has chosen to go out looking like a slob and come back and change his clothes, and same for my daughter. So they were able to do, like, make their own choices like grown-ups, like, because they're grown up. So yeah, like everything you said made total sense. Thank you for explaining. I really appreciate it. And I have heard other people say the same thing about being gay or trans people, and this helps me understand that a little more, and why they're so about it. They're scared.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the article that you wrote, you talk about feminine and masculine energy. However, this is not something that I really hear people talking about. So I want to read just a little part of it. For us to light up in life, to be truly effective, both feminine and masculine energies must be operating within us. Without them, we were also a dark, ineffective light. So having access to both energies is the only way we can light up and be our whole selves. Like I said, I've never heard anybody talking about this. And in fact, I've had issues when leaving comments about feminine and masculine energy, because people will push back and assume I mean male and female. But this doesn't have anything to do with gender. So does this matter in feminism and in this argument?
So if you were discussing cats and you were trying to, I don't know, set up a city for cats or a cat shelter or a community of cat owners or something,
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it would be relevant to discuss the nature of cats, cat energy, how cats like to express and animate themselves?
Yeah.
Or should we just ignore that?
No. We would want to know everything we can to make them as comfortable and happy as possible.
Right. You want to have a good project here. You want a thriving thing where things work out.
Yeah.
You don't want chaos and torture and to ruin the cat's lives or whatever.
Right.
Okay. And if you were building a peacock shelter and you know that the male peacocks like to show off and fan the tail feathers or whatever, and you know the females don't, is it prudent and wise to examine these tendencies, these evolutionary tendencies in their DNA, these ways of being that they happen to be, or even their socialized ways of being? Like they've developed a way of mating.
Yeah.
Maybe it was socialized, I don't know. But is there any point in discussing these energies, these tendencies, in order to create a pleasant environment for these peacocks, both sexes of peacocks?
Of course.
Right. So is it necessary or smart or wise to discuss feminine energy when we're discussing feminism?
Yeah.
Right. I can't believe people have any issue with this at all. How this could be confusing, I don't know. And I have no idea why people get so antsy discussing the nature of a being loaded with estrogen or the nature of a being loaded with testosterone.
I think...
Why can't we discuss the nature of those beings? Is it not wise and smart to discuss the nature of those beings?
It is.
When we're trying to set up a society or a movement or a foundation or a charity or whatever for a certain type of being, would it not be wise to discuss their tendencies, whether environmental, social, evolutionary, what have you?
Yeah, I completely agree.
Okay, so I think that answers the first question. It's absolutely necessary and kind of absurd not to discuss feminine energy and masculine energy when we're talking about these things.
Yeah.
If you find someone who's unable to do that or refuses to engage in discussion of those things, they're probably not serious about their movement and not worth talking to.
Yeah, and I think most people hear feminine and masculine and assume male and female. And the times that I have explained in comments to other people, like, I'm not talking about gender, I'm only talking about energy, they get confused or they just completely don't reply or anything.
Sure, because most people in the West are so disconnected from spirituality and their bodies and energy and these traditional evolutionary things that have been around since the dawn of time, since the dawn of caveman days. But if you were to discuss feminine and masculine energy with someone from the East, where they all know about the yin yang symbol, the Tao, they understand the balance of masculine and feminine, light and dark. They know there's a little hint of masculine in the feminine, a little hint of feminine in the masculine. They understand the play of these polarities. It's very common for people to understand that in the East. If you go talk to them, they won't be confused and it will go much better. You'll have a much smoother conversation. But the same way I can't discuss astrophysics with a child, I can't discuss masculine and feminine energy with most people in the West or with most feminists or whoever.
Yeah.
They just don't have the background. They don't have the context. They haven't been raised to know about this. They haven't learned about this. They haven't studied it. They haven't even hinted at it. All they understand is gender and gender spectrum and men and women and whatever, non-binary and so on. They don't understand masculine and feminine energy, and they don't realize that every single human has both masculine and feminine inside them at all times. And of course they do. Otherwise, a single father could never nurture his child in a feminine, caring way when the child needs it. A single mom could never discipline their child when the child needs it.
Right.
But they can, because we all have those energies inside of us.
Yes. I had never heard of masculine or feminine. I mean, I knew what it was, but I didn't know what each one entailed until we met.
Yeah.
And I had Google at my fingertips for 40 years and I didn't have any idea.
Well, and the only reason I know about it is because I read Osho and I read David Data and I read all of these Tantra teachers and Mantak Chia and so on and so forth. And so I have a reasonable background in this and I'm able to discuss it and I won't get confused along the journey of the discussion.
Right.
But go try discussing it with someone who hasn't read any of that stuff and doesn't know about that stuff. And they're just going to think you mean men and women. They're just going to think you mean male and female.
Yeah.
So there's nothing you can do. You go in the comments, you're trying to discuss astrophysics with a child when you do that.
Yeah. And now I make it clear ahead of time. Like I'll say, I'll mention masculine and feminine, and then like in brackets, I'm like, not gender, like the yin yang. I use this also as my example. So yeah. Okay. All right. So then where does masculine and feminine energies enter into this, into feminism as a whole?
Good question. So like I said earlier, every human is an individual and should be allowed to pursue their own individual way of living for the most part, as long as it's not harming everybody else left and right, right?
Yes.
And so if you take any individual, they're going to either lean feminine, lean masculine, or be one of the very rare balanced people who don't lean either way. I think some studies were done and it was 90% of the population leans feminine or leans masculine, and then 10% are balanced, neutral, switch, whatever. And they prefer equal amounts of those energies.
Right.
And for a long time in our society, feminine leaning beings have gotten the short end of the stick, which is where feminism came from. They were like, hey, we're all feminine leaning beings. We like to do feminine things, but we're also getting the short end of the stick though. And like for the longest time, they were happy and proud to raise families. They were happy and proud to be nurturing. They were happy and proud to dress up and show off and be beautiful and be radiant and do these feminine things. And for the longest time, masculine leaning beings were happy to do the providing and the building and the doing and the business of life, the providing and the resource creation. But when the feminine leaning people realized they were getting the short end of the stick and their contribution was not being honored or respected as it should be, or as they would prefer it to be, they got riled up. And they were like, we should at least have the right to vote and own property. This is ridiculous. And then either they or the Rockefellers or somebody inspired them to also think, hey, we should be allowed to work if we want. Okay. And so now all these feminine leaning beings got the right to vote and got the right to own property and got the right to work. And they've focused heavily on that last one recently. And the working is the providing and the resource creation and the empire building I was talking about earlier. And so they've downplayed a lot of their feminine leaning ways to focus on a masculine leaning type of thing. It was traditionally masculine leaning people who would go and do the empire building and do the work and earning. And so when you have feminine leaning beings who go and dedicate their lives to masculine leaning tasks, it can go one of two ways. They can excel at it and thrive at it and basically become masculine because they've stopped animating and expressing that feminine side of themselves so much. They're not at home nurturing. They're not at home beautifying and being radiant and pampering themselves and doing these feminine, restorative, rejuvenative things.
Mm-hmm.
They're now doing the focused, driven, disciplined, aggressive, masculine leaning things.
Mm-hmm.
Or they do all that, dedicate their life to work, realize it wasn't fulfilling. They missed their feminine leaning ways, and now they want to go back and swing the pendulum the other way. They want to be a stay-at-home mom. They want to raise a family. They want to stop working, and so on. So hopefully you can see that feminism started because feminine energy wasn't being honored, and so they stepped up and banded together, and they made moves to change this. But they didn't stop there, and they started moving from feminine energy towards masculine energy and taking masculine roles. And now they're like, oh, I'm the masculine. I don't need a man. I'm just as good as them at everything. And to me, the only healthy way for feminism to stay around is to go back to their roots of honoring the feminine, because we still sort of live in a patriarchy and we still don't honor the feminine correctly. And just giving them the right to vote and property isn't really what it's about. It's that we don't really celebrate or financially reward nurturing. We don't really celebrate or financially reward rest and rejuvenation. We don't really celebrate and financially reward connection with Mother Earth and community and connection with family. We don't really financially reward and celebrate coordinating of events and bringing people together and union and harmony. We financially reward war. We financially reward drilling for oil and polluting the earth. We financially reward driven, ambitious, masculine energy. But we actually don't really celebrate and honor or reward feminine energy very much. They get slut shamed, their beauty is made fun of, they're called shallow, they're downplayed, their nurturing and stay at home is marked as unambitious. And so this is the only reason a healthy feminism could stick around, in my opinion, is if they were fighting for these things. They're not, but they should be standing up for feminine leaning energy and feminine leaning tasks, feminine leaning behaviors, feminine leaning things, right? Nature has this. The two sexes of the peacock have their ways of being. And in peacocks, it's reversed, actually. The guy does all the showing off and beauty stuff. But regardless, nature has our ways of being and our sexual differences. And I don't really see feminism fighting for those things currently. Instead, they're just fighting to be men and to take the place of men and to not need men and to downplay men and dismiss men and marginalize men and whatever. I don't know what they're fighting for, to be honest, but it's definitely not the stuff I said. Right?
Yeah. No.
And so you can see how modern feminism is kind of confused. And if they would get back to their feminine energy roots, and if they would stand up and fight for their feminine energy ways of being and aim to get those honored and cherished and celebrated and, yes, financially rewarded because they are valuable parts of the economy, that would be great. That would be healthy feminism as far as I'm concerned. And I think I got away from my original point, but my original point is everyone is an individual with both of these energies inside them. And if you want to be a feminine leaning person, go ahead. I don't care. And I don't care what your gender is. If you want to be a feminine leaning person, you get to be that. But do a good job of it. Don't just pretend. Don't fake it. Don't lie to people. If you're going to be a feminine leaning person, it better be in your heart and soul. And you better do a fucking good job of it. Right? Don't half-ass shit. Don't do things poorly. Don't trick yourself or convince yourself and others that you're one thing when you're not. And if any movement out there doesn't resonate with you, if you're like, I'm a feminine leaning being, but this kind of feminism doesn't seem very feminine to me and it's not the way to go and I don't think it's healthy and I don't resonate with this, that's fine. Don't participate in it. Maybe start your own movement that you do resonate with, or just live your life without movements. Ultimately, the more self-knowledge we have, the better decisions we can make for ourselves and the healthier we can live and the better we can thrive. And so it's really key for people to know their own balance of feminine and masculine energies, which they lean towards, which they prefer. It's important that they can nurture when they need to. I'm a man. I'm fairly driven, but I can nurture when I need to, right? Sin is a feminine-leaning person, a woman, and she likes to be beautiful, and she likes to be playful and bubbly and feminine and so on, but she can work and get shit done when she has to. Now, does she want her whole life to turn it into work? I don't think so. But could she do it for a spell or a phase? Sure. Beyonce was a pretty driven woman in her business life, but in her fashion life, she was quite feminine. And when she married Jay-Z, she seems to have focused on family quite a bit and taken much less focus on career and drive and ambition. These are the phases of her life. These are her own choices. You can do the same thing. Whatever you want, you can do it. But it counts on you being super honest with yourself and being super honest with your energy.
Okay, that was really good. Thank you. Thank you so much. One of the things that I noticed a lot in my research is a lot of women saying, I make money, I have a business, I don't need a man. But I totally disagree, because it is in our nature as women to want to be protected, to want to be taken care of. And I don't mean financially. I just mean this is just how being a woman in nature, the natural parts of us are. We want to be protected. We want to be loved. We want a relationship, and we want someone to make us feel safe.
Hey, those could be socialized. Maybe that's not your nature. Maybe the patriarchy has just convinced you that's what you want. You know what? I'm done with this podcast. What? Someone in the comments going to say that.
I know. I know. And that's okay. You can think that, and you can feel that way. You have every right, but you're wrong. So we are animals. We are the top of the food chain, but we're still animals. And like the female animals of different species, they nurture and love and build the home, build the nest, and the male hunts and protects and
be
keeps
careful.
them
You're
safe.
going to get torn apart by all the biologists, because it's like
whatever.
praying mantises and
I'm not
black
here
widows.
for exceptions.
I know.
I'm not here for exceptions. I said it earlier in the podcast. We're not about exceptions here. We're about the general majority, and the general majority of animals, this is how they behave. And we as humans are animals. And I can only speak for myself. As a woman, as a feminine woman, as a queer, feminine, Latina woman, I want to feel safe. I want to be taken care of. I want to be provided for. I want to be loved. And you provide all that stuff for me.
Yeah, if that's what you want, I want you to have it.
Yeah.
That's my whole point.
I know.
People should have what they want.
Right. Exactly.
Work towards your dreams.
And so people have criticized me, and I've lost friends. I've lost family members. They don't agree with me, and I don't care anymore.
Well, I don't know. My whole vibe of this podcast has been people should get what they want. I don't know how you argue with that message.
You can't.
Everyone watching.
I mean, someone will, but
I care about everyone watching, and I want them to have what they want.
Yeah.
And everyone else has an agenda for them. You should do this. You should do that. Our way is the best. I'm here saying, honestly, I don't care. Do whatever you want, have whatever you want, and make whatever mistakes you want in your phases in life. That seems super supportive to me.
I agree. Well, thank you so much. We could go on and on. At almost every topic that we talk about on this podcast, this is just a tiny drop in the bucket of the things that we think and feel and could discuss. So thank you so much for your time and for teaching me how to embrace my femininity, for teaching me that it is okay to admit what I wanted, because I held back for many years, pretending that I was one thing, pretending that I was okay being masculine, pretending that I was okay being head of household when I was not. So thank you for letting me feel normal. And I love you.
I love you too.
Okay, so is there anything that your final thoughts that you want to add to? I mean, we both said a lot, and you had so much heart and love and beautiful words that you've already shared with us. But I thought maybe you might have some final words before we say goodbye.
It's pretty simple. Just be who you want to be. But it takes courage, it takes self-knowledge and self-awareness, and you're going to have to go through some mistakes and some rough phases that teach you who you are. And as soon as you find those, don't fight it or resist it or cling to the old or do what people are telling you should do. Tune into yourself, learn the lessons, let the old go, and become the new you. Be who you want to be. Movements.
And that's why this podcast is called Eyes Wide Open.
Keep rising.